Welcome to Jets 360 Live. Ethan Greenberg, Eric Allen, joined by Bleacher Report's Matt Miller. Now, we're live in Indianapolis for the NFL Scouting Combine. In about an hour 15 minutes, 2:15, Jets head coach Adam Gase will take the podium. 15 minutes after that, General Manager Mike McCagnon will take the podium. Both can be watched on NewYorkJets.com, Facebook, YouTube. But right now, no more introductions, Matt. We're diving in. It's draft season. This is Matt Miller's wheelhouse. Earlier today, Cardinals general manager Steve Keim was asked by reporters if Josh Rosen is Arizona's quarterback, and he said, yeah, for now, for sure.
All right, so the reason we're starting the show by talking about the Arizona Cardinals, of course, at NFL Draft Scout is the Jets have the number 3 overall selection. They have their quarterback in-house. Arizona has the number 1 overall pick in the 2019 draft.
Yeah, there's a lot of dominoes that could fall. And when we were sitting here together last year, guys, no one ever thought that Sam Darnold would fall, right? We would say, no, maybe you'll get Josh Rosen. Maybe it's Baker Mayfield. Maybe it's Josh Allen. We never thought Sam Darnold would fall. So it's important to note that the domino effect could definitely happen here. If the Arizona Cardinals do believe that it's for now with Josh Rosen, if they draft Kyler Murray, you guys could be looking at a situation where Nick Bosa or Josh Allen or Quinnen Williams could be on the board. So if you're a Jets fan, you're rooting hard for Kyler Murray to be the number 1 overall pick in the draft.
Do you like Murray as a prospect? And secondly, from everything you're hearing, does Arizona have serious interest in taking him right there at 1?
I like him as a prospect. Now, there are question marks. I don't like him as much as I liked Darnold last year or Rosen or Baker, but I do like his skill set. It's very unique. He's a hard guy to evaluate because I can't go back and say, okay, well, I watched X quarterback do this so I know it works. And as you're seeing on the B-roll you guys are running, he moves around, he makes plays. How much can you do that in the NFL? We saw Lamar Jackson struggle in the playoffs once defenses figured out, right, we're going to play 6 and 7 DBs and we're going to make you throw the ball. He struggled. With Kyler Murray, I do believe he's a better thrower than Lamar Jackson was, but you have the size issue and a 1-year starter. So there's not a lot of tape out there. Now, to your other point, Eric, yeah, everyone you talk to is saying this dude's going to be a top 5 pick because he's just too explosive. I think if he were to run the 40 here, he would be in the 4.3 range, which is unreal. Like, it's Michael Vick type stuff, what he does athletically. So, yeah, I do think he's going to be a top 5 pick, and it could even be a situation for the Jets where they trade down, from 3 to a team like the Jags at 7, the Broncos at 10, someone who feels that need to come up and get a quarterback.
What do you think Kyler Murray's going to partake in here, and should he weigh in?
Oh, he has to weigh in.
Okay.
Yeah, this isn't one of those deals where you don't have to turn your taxes in. He's got to get measured, man. He has to. I think you have to come in and at least go to that. And we've seen the pictures of him bulking up. Peter King reported that he's up to 206 pounds. It's all positive for him. And you can't run from it forever. It's already leaked that he's probably 5'9 and 5'8". We know about how tall he is. The hand size is probably the biggest thing right now that we don't know and that will be a factor if he comes in below the 9-inch threshold for hands. But I watched a guy in my home state, Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, pretty good quarterback, and his hands are just a little over 9. So sometimes you're good enough that you can get away with being under those thresholds.
If the Jets do indeed stay at 3, do you see it as a 3-horse race? You just talked about Nick Bosa, Josh Allen, and Quinnen Williams.
I think that is the race right now, and this is a very good class at some of the areas the Jets have a need. Obviously, Leonard Williams is entrenched there at defensive tackle, but we just saw a team in the NFC, the Los Angeles Rams, make a run to the Super Bowl with 2 dominant defensive tackles. So yeah, I think we have to break away from this idea that you have one tackle, you're not going to draft another. Quinnen Williams, with the importance of interior penetration in the NFL right now, Quinnen and Leo could play side by side. I'm not worried about that. And whether it's in a 3-4 or 4-3, everyone's in sub-package these days.
That's
that
right.
Stuff doesn't matter. With Josh Allen, I think you see a great athlete coming out of Kentucky, 6'5", 260 pounds, incredibly productive. He's mature. He's a father. He's what you want from a character and athlete standpoint, but he did feast a little bit on less than great competition at times. And then Nick Bosa is a Bosa. I mean, come on. He's Nick Bosa. I mean,
but are there any concerns that Bosa did not play for the majority of last season?
I think you worry about a guy who had an ACL tear in high school and then a core injury as a junior. I firmly believe he could have got back on the field this year if Ohio State had been a national title contender. We probably would have seen him get back for a playoff run, but because they were out of the mix, I think he did the smart thing to take a step back and get ready for this week, and by all accounts, he's going to work out here.
How about Ed Oliver? Because this is someone, beginning of the year, he was high on a lot of people's boards, kind of tailed off, and now coming into Combine Week. Everyone expects him to really put up some numbers here. Where do you think he ends up?
It's funny how it works, right? Like in September, you're number 2 or number 3, and then people start to play, maybe he's in the 20s, and then you test well and you jump back up. Ed Oliver is a lot like Kyler Murray in that I don't have a historical comparison for a guy who is probably going to be 6 feet tall, 270 pounds, running the 4.5s, and he played nose tackle at Houston. Like, that just does not happen. But you can look at the athleticism, the hand use, the moves that he comes with. And if you look at the stat sheet, you're not going to see a ton of great production, but that's because he was doubled and triple teamed. But again, like Nick Bosa, a guy who was hurt this year, he had the incident with Major Applewhite on the sidelines over the coat thing. So there are some question marks there outside of just, is he big enough to compete in the NFL?
All right, you're watching a special installment of Jets 360 Live. Eric Allen and Ethan Greenberg here in Indianapolis alongside our buddy at NFL Draft Scout. That is Matt Miller from Bleacher Report. Momentarily, we'll also be joined by the NFL columnist who is Judy Batista, and then Albert Breer is going to stop by as well. Let's go back to Bosa because we talked a little bit about him. What do you think separates him in terms of being the elite pass rusher in this crop, which is, Matt, I'm following you, and I'm reading everybody who's studying these prospects. This is a good edge group.
It's a very good edge group. I have 4 in the top 11, so it's a very, very good group. With Nick Bosa, what separates him is you know exactly what you're getting. This is a player whose family is football. His brother was a first-round pick. His dad was a first-round pick. You know what you're going to get. You're not going to have to worry about how's he going to handle money, how's he going to handle adversity, or the fact that he's going to have to come to practice every day. The spotlight. He's lived in the spotlight. He's fine, so you don't worry about anything off the field. But I think he's better than his brother Joey was. He's quicker. I think Joey had stronger hands, but Nick is more refined in terms of pass rush moves. You'll hear coaches talk about, does he have a plan as a rusher? Nick Bosa has a plan. You saw a swim move there. He is very good at knifing guys away with his hands, and he does have the speed to close. I think he's up there with Myles Garrett as some of the best prospects we've seen in the last 5 years at this position.
Well,
we talked about trading down briefly for a bit, but if the Jets, in fact, do get a trade offer, let's say Kyler Murray or one of the quarterbacks makes a run up, because history proves people right, and 17 out of the last 18 drafts, a quarterback has gone top 5. So assuming one does go top 5 and the Jets are trade partner, could the Jets still get a talented edge rusher if they move down to, let's say, in the top 10?
Yeah, you absolutely could. If you bump back and miss out on Josh Allen and Nick Bosa, you could start to look at Cleveland Farrell from Clemson, Montez Sweat from Mississippi State, Jaikai Polite from Florida. And there's a good group of players that if you are in that range of, say 8 to 15, you could still get a very good edge rusher. And I will add that if there is a trade back, this is a very deep draft. And the early projections are that next year is going to be a very deep draft. So loading up to get picks this year and next year is smart team building. I think the question is this a win-now situation for this front office, or is it something where they can be a little bit conservative, move back, and still get picks?
On the offensive side of the ball, what I see early is not a lot of big-time playmakers at the top.
Yeah.
There's depth maybe at the wide receiver position, but I see offensively good year for centers, good year for tight ends as well.
Yeah, it really is. And we'll talk a lot about T.J. Hawkinson over the next month, I'm sure, from Iowa, who I think could be a top 10 player in this class. He's like Travis Kelce, but with none of the off-field obnoxiousness. He's just all ball. So it is a good center class with Elton Jenkins and Garrett Bradbury coming out of the Southeast. It is but lacking at receiver, especially because Oklahoma's Marquise Brown had the foot injury, so he's not going to participate in any pre-draft workouts. You got A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf both coming out of Ole Miss. They both look like physical freaks. We will see them work out here this week, and I'm interested to see that because I have a tie at wide receiver right now, and I'm waiting for somebody to blow me away so I can move them up.
Well, here's a curveball. Your favorite receiver overall in terms of what he can do as a football player is a guy out of Colorado State who a lot of people are not talking about.
A guy a lot of people think you can't draft, and that's Preston Williams, who won't be participating in the drills this week. He'll be doing medicals and interviews because of an arrest earlier in his college career. He's a guy who transferred from Tennessee to Colorado State. He looks like Julio Jones, though. So it's hard because you want to get excited about the player, all the while recognizing there's some things in his background that might make it impossible, and especially for the Jets, a team that has traditionally stayed away from any player that has a violent arrest or a violent situation, especially with a woman in their background.
I want to move to tackle real quick because, again, another position that is tied to the Jets, and earlier in the year, I mean, you said it, it's funny how things shake out. Jonah Williams was the guy. Now, is he a left tackle? And the other guys that are in the mix, like a Juwan Taylor out of Florida or an Andre Dillard out of Washington State and Cody Ford, where do you see those guys going, and how difficult is it for someone like Taylor and Ford, who played predominantly on the right side, to then be, let's say, a top 15 selection and be expected to play on the left?
I don't follow this guy at NFL Draft Scout because you said today Taylor might be the top.
I do think Taylor could be the top guy. Remember last year, Mike McGlinchey was drafted 9 overall, playing right tackle for the 49ers. So it does happen. I think teams are getting smarter, though when you realize that you have to stop Von Miller and Khalil Mack, your right tackle needs to be pretty good at football. So I think with Ford and Taylor, respectively, they're going to be okay over there. Jonah Williams comes in, his arms are over 33 inches, and now people are saying, oh, well, you want 34 and a half, or you got to be 315 pounds. I watched this dude dominate for 3 years in the SEC.
Yeah.
That's all I need to watch. He's a left tackle, in my opinion. And, yeah, he's a little light, but, Joe Staley has told me before that he plays at 295, and he's one of the best tackles in football. So if your technique's good, if you're athletic enough, if you're smart, if you're patient and poised, you could succeed. I think Jonah Williams is a left tackle all the way.
Is Juwan Taylor a right tackle?
I think so. He came in light. I'm anxious to see him work out. He came in at 312. He was listed at 328. So is he losing weight to show that he has some better agility than we expect and is somebody who could play over on the left side? I think that's a pretty big question right now.
All right, so folks are following your big board. The name that jumps out the list that maybe people say, well, does he belong there? Josh Jacobs, the running back out of Alabama.
I love this
Matt
kid.
Miller has a man crush on him.
I do, man.
5 overall on the big board.
5 overall. I'm a huge fan of his. I think he's a better prospect than Leonard Fournette was. I think when you take away the health concerns and we forget these things, I like it better than I like Todd Gurley.
Wow.
Now, he doesn't have Gurley's home run hitting speed, but he is an all-around back. He has hands. He has power at 220 pounds. He came in and measured at 5'10", which I thought was a win for him to be above that threshold. But you watch him play, there's almost no wear and tear. And what he did at Alabama, it's like Alvin Kamara. The way he catches the ball, the way he makes people miss, and then he will put a shoulder in you and put you in the ground. I mean, he did it in the national championship game. So he is a fantastic prospect.
Okay, so last question for me here before we bring in Judy Batista, and you got to make the rounds here because you were double booked. One of my favorites is Devin White from LSU.
I second that.
What do you think about him?
I love him. I love Devin White, and I'm not name dropping here, but I'm going to name drop here.
Okay.
I talked to him last summer, and he said, hey, I respect you. What do I need to do to get better, to be a top 10 player? And I sent him a list. It was like, here's what I see. He got back to me about a month ago and was like, hey, I followed your advice, and these are the things I worked on, and he did. He's a great player. He's a great athlete. We saw him make the jump this year from being that former prep stud running back. He's a linebacker now. I think he's up there with guys like Miles Jack and Jalen Smith in terms of his sideline-to-sideline range, how he can affect it as a pass rusher, a blitzer, a run stopper. Where the NFL is going, you have to have speed at linebacker. You got to be able to cover. You got to be able to rush. He's the prototype for all that.
Could he be a top 5 pick, yes or no?
Oh, yeah. He absolutely could be. Now, we haven't seen linebackers go very early in the draft. It's always pass rushers, tackles, and quarterbacks, but on talent alone, he definitely could be.
All right, lastly, what are you doing in Indianapolis this week with your fans?
Yeah, this weekend we're having a big Bleacher Report Stick to Football podcast meet-up at Tootie Brewing Company. It's Saturday night at 5 o'clock.
Is it sold out?
It's not sold out because we didn't put a cap on it because we thought, nobody will come, and now like 200 people have signed up. So free beer, free swag, come hang out and meet the Stick to Football crew.
That is Matt Miller,
Appreciate
NFL Draft Scout. Thank you very much. And this is Jets 360 Live here at Indianapolis, the NFL Scouting Combine. It's a great time of year.
It's underway.
Well, let's just think about this for a minute. This time last year, the Jets had the 6th overall pick. And talk was, who are the Jets going to have at 6th overall? We'll see. Then less than a month from now, it was March 17th, 2018, the Jets go up from 6-3, and the rest is history. It just feels like forever ago.
Well, folks can't see it right now, but the team actually situated to our right is the New York Giants. And the New York Giants, of course, had the number 2 overall selection in the 2018 draft. And Saquon Barkley took the Combine by storm last year, and he ultimately was a number 2 overall selection. And that made Sam Darnold available for the green and white, and that is a big piece of your future. Monstrous pickup acquisition for Mike McCagnon. Remember, March 17th makes the trade up from 6-3 with the Indianapolis Colts in order to get one of the promising quarterbacks who turns out to be Darnold.
All right, Jets 360 Live is joined by columnist for NFL.com, Judy Batista. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Judy, it's always a pleasure to see you. Hey, listen, since you're covering everything here, you're on. Before I just ask you about some of the major headlines that you're looking forward to this week, NFL Competition Committee. They've met already and talked about replay. Now, there was a very important play that happened in the New Orleans Saints, LA Rams, NFC Championship game. Pass interference wasn't.
You may have heard about that
yeah,
one.
it wasn't called.
Yes.
So, what can you tell us about those conversations here this week?
Yeah, I came away thinking it's very possible they do nothing, that nothing changes. I think the competition committee is reluctant to expand replay to judgment calls. Certainly, they are very reluctant to expand it to non-calls, to be able to go back at something that wasn't called and say, hey, maybe that should be called. So I came away that the competition committee is reluctant. I think the big question is when we get to the March meeting where all the coaches, all the GMs, all the owners are in the room, if there's enough momentum there to expand replay or to change officiating somehow. But you need 24 votes to change anything. That's a lot.
Yes.
And there just hasn't been anywhere close to that number willing to change replay in the past.
What's your sense, the appetite outside of New Orleans? As far as for this to happen.
I don't think it, you understand the passion of Saints fans and Sean Payton and the owner, Gail Benson, so you understand their anger. I don't get the sense, though, that outside of that there's an appetite for expanding replay. I think you hear the phrase from them, unintended consequences, a lot. I think they're afraid that you're opening a can of worms if you start trying to review judgment plays, judgment calls.
Where does it stop?
Pass interference, roughing the passer. Like, where does it stop? Don't forget, the pace of the game is a huge initiative from the league. God knows they don't want the games to get any longer. Yeah. They don't like delays during replay. So I think that's a part of the equation, too. So I would not be surprised if we get all the way through the offseason and they haven't done anything.
I want to rewind the clock about a month. And it feels like forever ago, but Adam Gase was named the head coach of the New York Jets.
That does feel like forever ago.
Yeah, it feels like it was last year.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to get your thoughts on the hire.
Well, I thought it was a good hire, and here's why. When they let Todd Bowles go, and first of all, let's start by saying that Todd Bowles is a great guy, and I think, I certainly expect him to be a head coach in the league someday again. Really well respected.
He's a good man.
Very good man. But when he was let go, certainly I thought they needed to do two things that the Jets haven't done in a really long time, and that is hire an experienced coach, not a first-time head coach, and go with offense. Like, that's just the way the league is going. You have this fresh, young quarterback that you need to mold and mentor and bring along, hopefully, for the next 15 years. They needed to do that. They haven't done it in a generation of coaches. So he was the right guy, right? I mean, there were two people on the market who fit that, Mike McCarthy and Adam Gase. I think he's the right guy. He brings a lot of intensity, which I also think will be good for the team. Like, light a fire under some people. That's never a bad thing. And I think he'll do really good things with Sam Darnold, who is, there's a lot to work with Sam Darnold, obviously.
What did you like most about Darnold's rookie year?
Look, I thought he showed some toughness and some resilience. I mean, obviously, he had that first game where, me included, right? I was watching going, oh my God,
As somebody who covered the Jets in the past, what was your thought?
I thought
in Detroit.
I thought this is it. Like, wow. Look, I covered Chad Pennington and we thought he was going to be the guy, and then unfortunately he got hurt, But I thought they got him, right? This is the guy. And then, as you expect with a rookie, roller coaster up and down. But then after he came back off the injury, I thought he showed us something, resilience, grit, toughness, and then just the on-the-field stuff looked pretty good. And you thought, like, you got a lot to work with. This kid's got not just the intelligence, which we knew, he's got the tools, and he's also got the toughness. And let's be honest, being a franchise quarterback, we just, Dave Gettleman for the Giants was talking about what gets thrown at franchise quarterbacks. Like, there's a lot. I mean, you are thrust into the leadership position, all of the attention, especially in New York, especially the Jets. Like, look, I'm guilty of it too, right? Did they finally find the next Joe Namath? Like, no pressure, kid. Just be the next Joe Namath. But look, I thought he showed an ability to handle all that. And frankly, I know people say like he's sort of got this flatline personality and like this sort of laid back California cool thing. Like, I think that will serve him well.
But you were there in the early 2000s, and you covered a young Chad Pennington. My argument, Judy, has been this is the best situation for the Jets at quarterback since 2002 when Pennington took over for Testaverde, and he was sensational.
I would agree with that. Look, I mean, there have been fits and starts. I think for a while with Mark Sanchez, we thought that might work out, and they obviously had a great defense around Mark, so they went far. But I think this is the best situation they've had, right? I mean, first of all, Josh is an outstanding mentor, teacher kind of guy, and I'm sure, I'm not in the quarterback's room, but I am sure a great guy to lean on, right? Like,
those
for
guys,
anything, for any kind of question.
They were never separated.
Right. Like the video of them, like, shaping
their
their hair
yeah.
together. I was like, that's very cute. Okay. I think it's the best quarterback situation. Now they gotta do what every team has to do when you have a young quarterback. You got to build. You got to give him some weapons. You got to insulate him a little bit. You got to give him some help. You can't expect that the second-year guy is going to do everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned Adam Gase giving a shot in the arm, let's say, to the team. What do you think about the pairing with Greg Williams, who might be the definition of a shot in the arm?
Yeah. Look, I think, as fascinated as everybody else in the league is to see how this works, because these are two intense personalities. The fact that they have no work history previous to this is really interesting. That doesn't often happen in the NFL. I think Greg Williams showed, though, what he can bring to the table when he took over for the Browns in the middle of the season last year and gave him a shot in the arm, right? And you saw the results. So I am fascinated. I'm also sort of interested, just sort of more in the X's and O's part of it. It seemed that Gase wanted to hire Greg Williams to have a head coach on the defensive side so that Adam can focus on the offense, which is great. But I'm sort of interested to see how that works out, because we know we've seen that in the past where, the head coach sometimes has to get involved in the other side of the ball. So I'm sort of interested to see just how they mesh and how they get it to work.
Do you anticipate that being must-see television or must-see digital or must-see social, those two matching up against each other?
I would like to be in the coaches' meetings. Let's put it that way.
Well, we're going to see it on the field during training camp.
Yeah,
that's correct.
I'm very excited about that.
Yes. I mean, look, they are high-intensity personalities, and the fact that they have no history together, like you have no idea. Maybe it's smooth sailing, and it's great. But who knows? I mean, it'll be fascinating. They're both. Let's state the obvious. They're both good coaches, and so in that respect, I don't worry about it. I worry, just like you do in any coaching staff. How do they mesh?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because we talked about the energy, but in Greg Williams in particular, what do you like that Williams brings to this defense?
Well, his history is that, he's a super aggressive, defensive coach, and I think that's good. They obviously need some pieces to help them. They need pass rush help. Yeah. But you like to see that, like a real aggressive kind of defense, and I think that also pairs well with a quarterback, right? I mean, you want a defense that can get the other team off the field and give your young quarterback more opportunities.
And the Browns turned people over last year. If you really look at their numbers, right. I know a lot of people say, well, they give up yards. Well, they were giving Baker Mayfield a lot of opportunities with the football because Williams gets after the quarterback.
Right.
That is part of his DNA. He is coming
it's
early
high
and
risk,
often.
It's high risk, but it's high reward, right? He might blitz and they might throw it right over your head, but on the other hand, you might turn it over. So
all right, so free agency actually precedes the draft. Free agency starts March 13th.
Which is right around the corner.
Right.
The Pittsburgh Steelers have indicated that they will not use any tag on Le'Veon Bell. He will become an unrestricted free agent. Your thoughts on the market for Le'Veon Bell? Because as you know, Judy, a lot of Jets fans have been following that situation awfully closely.
Well, look, there's going to be a considerable market for Le'Veon Bell. He'll be 27, which is starting to trend toward the older side for a running back, but obviously, he had a year off, so he should be fresh. he is the kind of weapon. I don't want to spend the Jets' money, but they
Right.
have a lot of money, so I don't feel so bad about spending it. He is the kind of weapon that can help a young quarterback. There's no question about it. He's a dual threat. I mean, we know from what he did at the Steelers, right? He's a great running back. He's so much fun to watch because he's so patient. I love to watch him sort of hold the ball for a second, stand back, watch everything open, and then right through. He would be a great help for Sam Darnold. Look, he's probably going to come at a fairly high price tag. I don't know if he's going to get as much as some of the numbers you've seen floating around there.
Right.
I mean, that is a huge price tag for a running back, especially a 27-year-old. I think they should be one of the leading contenders, and I do think they are one of the best fits for him.
Okay.
Why do you say that?
Well, because he does provide a dual threat, and they need the Jets need weapons. They need playmakers. They need explosive playmakers, right? We saw last year in the NFL, explosive plays are what dominates the game now, right? I mean, look at what Patrick Mahomes did in the Chiefs. It's hard to replicate that, but you need explosive players. He is an explosive player. Yes, he's going to be a 27-year-old running back. He's still a really explosive player.
Speaking of explosive players, the Jets have one on the defensive side of the ball. That's Jamal Adams.
Yeah.
He really made his mark his sophomore professional campaign, and I thought he had a fabulous Pro Bowl week, even though the guys are, taking it easy down there. Jamal did have a form tackle on a Patriots mascot. I'm sure the Patriots mascot is fine. What do you think?
You know what? I think Jamal does not, does he not realize his own strength? Does he not realize that the person in there is not a professional athlete?
I would say he definitely does not realize his own strength.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys who just has old man strength.
Right.
He just walks around.
If Jamal Adams tackled one of us, we'd definitely be in the hospital. I don't think he realizes that.
Before we get you out of here, I just wanted to get your thoughts on him as not only as a player, but him as a personality in New York.
Oh, he's please spend your entire career here. He's terrific, right? I mean, and I also like sort of what he is as sort of like a leader of the Jets, right? He seems to take a lot of pride in the Jets. He's trying to recruit guys to come to the Jets. I really like that. They obviously haven't won a ton of games yet, but I like that he's sort of emotionally invested in the Jets and getting them better.
Judy, as always, so great catching up. Can we pencil you in for Arizona in about a month?
Absolutely. I'll see you in a few weeks there.
Awesome. Thanks so
Judy.
much.
Good, guys.
All right, Ethan Greenberg and Eric Allen here live in Indianapolis from the Combine. We're covering a lot today, EA. We got some draft. We got free agency. Again, Adam Gase will speak in about 45 minutes at the podium. You can watch on NewYorkJets.com. 15 minutes after that, General Manager Mike McCagnon. And right now we are joined on set by Monday morning quarterbacks Albert Breer. How you doing, Albert?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
Good.
Awesome. One of the busiest guys in the National Football League.
No doubt about it.
What storylines are you looking out for this week?
Yeah, I think the obvious one from a draft perspective is Kyler Murray and what's going to happen with him and the effect Baker Mayfield had on the way that we all look at quarterbacks, his success. And so I think he's fascinating. I think that there was the way the general public views a draft class like this draft was not going to have a lot of juice. A lot of great defensive linemen, but that doesn't move the needle the way a quarterback does. And so, I think Kyler's is right now and will be the dominant storyline when it comes to the draft over the next 2 months. And then I think the other thing I'm sort of keeping an eye on is the trade market. The effect that teams like the Eagles and the Rams being more aggressive will have on the trade market. I think, what they've done in taking significant risk over the last couple of years, they've given every other team in the league cover. And so, I think there are going to be a lot of GMs out there that are going to be emboldened to take big swings. And so, that means it doesn't mean these guys are on the block, but I would be surprised if Atlanta doesn't get calls on Julio Jones, if Cincinnati gets calls on A.J. Green, if the Giants get calls on Odell Beckham. Again, you don't want to mistake that for a guy being on the block.
Sure.
Right.
But I do think that some more of those calls, some more of those big swings are going to take place than would have in the past.
What do you make of the Antonio Brown situation? And there's so much you could get into.
Yeah. I've been told consistently, guys, that what Kevin Colbert said today, they're not going to give him away.
Yep.
And they've run comps. They've got one of the most developed analytics staffs in the league. They've run comps on what a receiver like that should bring back. And the comps that come up, if you want to look at it, for one reason or another, receivers go for ones, right? Amari Cooper went for a 1. Brandon Cooks went for a 1 twice in back-to-back off seasons. And this is a guy who's signed for 3 years at a reasonable rate. Now, if he really does want more money, then that changes the dynamic a little bit. But what he's under contract, where he's under contract now, that like his contract's a commodity at this point because it's 39 over 3, non-guaranteed. And, he's still a great player. And so it's going to be fascinating to watch that one because, you're taking on a lot if you bring him in. And so the ceiling's really high, but the floor could be pretty low too. And I don't think that there are all that many teams in the league that are equipped to absorb his personality the way the Steelers have been over the last few years.
What are a few names that Jets fans should be watching out as over the next couple weeks before we get to March 13th?
Yeah, I think I think you're looking at skill position players. Obviously, I think whatever they can do to put Sam Darnold in a better position to succeed. And so you look at some of the running backs. Obviously, Le'Veon Bell's name has been batted around with the Jets, and I think that they would take a look at him. I think the price is going to determine whether or not they're serious about it. But I think they'd be in the mix there if the price stays low. And then Tevin Coleman's another one who I think has a little bit of that. He's been a rotational guy in Atlanta. He's got probably a little bit of a higher ceiling, than some of the guys you might find in the draft. And he's obviously got experience, and his mileage is low because he has been backing up Devontae Freeman for the most part for the first 4 years of his career. And so those are some names I keep an eye on. And then I think you got to look at the pass rushers. And so who makes it to the market? I think Dee Ford gets franchised. I think Jadeveon Clowney gets franchised. I think Frank Clark gets franchised.
So what about DeMarcus Lawrence?
DeMarcus Lawrence is going to get franchised. Yeah. So I think those 4 guys come off the market. Does Grady Jarrett get franchised? I think that's a name you could be looking at. Dante Fowler, a guy the Jets looked at trading for before the trade deadline, are they willing to extend to bring in a player who's had some, I think what you call extracurricular issues,
okay.
but it's very, very talented. Was a 3rd overall pick in the draft, and so I look at offensive skill players and pass rushers. And
Jarrett's an interesting name you just threw out there.
Yeah.
What can you say about his athleticism? How he can disrupt the game from the interior?
He's a pure 3 technique, and we all saw it in the Super Bowl a few years ago. The way that he can really turn it on. He's got a quick first step. And I think for the type of defense that Greg Williams is going to run in New York, he'd be an interesting guy because so much of it is about getting upfield, about creating havoc. And that's why Grady's been a good fit for Dan Quinn in Atlanta. They're running that Seattle system, and so much of that Seattle system is based, again, on creating havoc up front. Grady Jarrett's been playing that way for a while. And so to have a guy come in who can be a guy who can create pressure and who can get in the backfield on a consistent basis could be a pretty valuable thing.
What do you think about Adam Gase and Greg Williams?
I think Adams – I think what's so interesting about where the Jets are with Adam Gase is now he gets a young quarterback to work with in Sam Darnold, and he's really going to get to make this thing in his own image, and the way I look at it, I look at what he was able to get out of Ryan Tannehill, what he was able to get out of Jay Cutler, what he's able to get out of Peyton Manning. Now, I know that there's a perception that he just sort of flipped the light switch with Peyton Manning, and he's throwing for 5,000 yards, and that's true. But he did get a career year out of Peyton Manning post-injury. And then even going back to Tim Tebow, he had a major role in them flipping the offense in 2011 in Denver. And so what Adam's really good at is making an offense fit for a quarterback. So I think that's going to be what's really interesting to watch with Sam. And, you guys are really going to enjoy Greg.
As it pertains to the draft, you mentioned Kyler, you mentioned teams trading up to get a quarterback. We've heard the names like the Giants, the Jags, the Dolphins, the Redskins. Do you think that there's any wild cards? Because if there's one thing about the draft,
you said the Giants, the
Giants, the Jags, the Redskins, and Dolphins and Broncos.
I would. I was going to say I wouldn't rule the Broncos out. And I think the other teams that are in play here, and if veteran quarterbacks can be traded, could be in play too. Like say the Cardinals decide we're taking Kyler Murray, and I would not rule that out. But say the Cardinals say we're taking Kyler Murray, then Josh Rosen is on the market, and so I think that they're going to be – you could see the teams that have older quarterbacks right now get creative. The Giants you've mentioned, I think they're a little past that now. but the Chargers, the Steelers, the Patriots, I think those teams are in that window now where it's like, if we have an opportunity to get the next one, we don't have to force it, but if we have the opportunity to get the next one, this might be a good time to do it. And so if there's something creative available to them, you could certainly see maybe them making it.
Great transition, because that's how I want to leave you today. Final question for you, because you got to make the rounds. You chronicled, you were all over the Jets moving up and getting Sam Darnold last year. What do you think about that move now in retrospect when you look back and say, March 17th last year, you go from 6-3, get in position to take him, and now you've been able to watch him for a year.
And keep a first-round pick.
I mean, I'd be encouraged with where he's at. You know, you're all in on him now because you're hiring a quarterbacks guy as the head coach, which is what you did with Adam Gase. And, you know, I think there's a lot of encouraging signs from year one. He still needs to clean up the turnover issue, and that's something that is difficult for quarterbacks who have that issue. It's hard to get rid of that, right? Like, that's just sort of becomes part of who you are, and, you know, there's a balance. Like, am I going to go out there and really sling it, or am I going to be more conservative? So Sam's got a ways to go. But if you get it right, like, there's no question it was worth it. There's no price too high to pay for stability at that position. And so I don't think that there's any question that if Sam is who the Jets think he is, and they're all in on him, then, you know, you won't regret that. What I do think the fallout this year is, I think the fallout for the Jets now is you could see them as aggressive as they were last year about moving up, because now they don't have a 2. You could see them maybe equally aggressive about moving down. And if I'm in the Jets front office, and I'm pretty sure they feel this way, root for Kyler Murray to get hot. Root for Dwayne Haskins to get hot, because that's what's going to create a market for your pick.
Albert Breer,
Albert, thank you very much.
Awesome as always.
That was Albert Breer on Monday morning quarterback. Again, EA, let's just wrap up here for a couple things. We've had 3 fantastic guests on. Matt Miller kicked off the show, then Judy Batista, and then we just wrapped up with Albert Breer. Now, we talked about different things. Who to watch at the Combine. Kyler Murray is the guy right now, but outside of Kyler, EA, who are you looking at? I know you mentioned that you like Devin White.
I do like Devin White.
But I want to hear who EA's guys are.
You know, it's so early in the process, Greens. We're still in February, aren't we? But, yeah, I do like that.
It is almost March. The Combine does end in March.
I do like Devin White. I don't know if you take him at number 3 overall. What Breer just left us with was, I think, something on all Jets' minds.
Yes.
Is that, can this quarterback market heat up? Because we've been doing this for a long time, and we've seen in the past where quarterbacks are ranked maybe they'll go late in the first round. Maybe they go in the middle of the first round. And ultimately we get to April, and we see guys coming off the board in the top 5. The 3 guys I'm most fascinated about, if the Jets stay at 3, are Quinnen Williams, the defensive tackle out of Alabama, obviously Nick Bosa, the edge from Ohio State, and then Josh Allen. Most people, I think, on the ground here so far who you talk to, they clearly think Bosa is the premier pass rusher in this draft. How much is a drop-off between him and Allen? I don't know that. Williams really intrigues me because he's an interior player, and I know it doesn't get most Jets fans excited, Greens, but he's a dominant interior player.
I've seen a lot of that Williams to the Jets, which means the Jets would have 2 Williams on the interior.
You know, they went on social media, though.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that. They worked out together, and Quinnen Williams said that he models his game after Leo, who's training out in California, according to his Instagram story. But that's all we have here on today's installment of Jets 360 Live. Adam Gase and Mike McCagnon will address the podium 2:15 and 2:30 today. You can watch that on NewYorkJets.com, Facebook, YouTube, all the works. And we'll be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock, same time, for some more coverage from Indianapolis.
And thanks to Matt Miller, Judy
Batista,
and Albert Breer.
And we'll see you tomorrow.